what are your thoughts on gender? I would say gender role in relationships, right? And how would you define it with today's modern relationship?
Yeah.
So the role of any gender in a relationship as traditional
Right.
role in the family
Right.
with today or modern relationship, how would you define that? How can we redefine to make it together?
I think there's a lot of aspects of the traditional like relationship between a man and a woman that I think should still be preserved, and sometimes in relationships they aren't. And I've had relationships, I've been in a serious relationship in the past where, you know, I lived with the guy, and so you try and juggle that, you know, close of a relationship, and, you know, how do you split the bills, and how do you, like, who pays for what? And obviously I grew up with my dad paying for everything because my mom was at home, and that's where her value was. And then, you know, when I was in this relationship, I was working, he was working. And so you kind of just do it half and half. But I did find I didn't really respect. I ended up not being able to respect him because, and maybe that's just because of the way I grew up and the relationship model that I have from my mom and dad. But I really began to think about it more and kind of realize that for me, I want the man to still, I feel like he's not a man if he can't provide. Like, I want to be able to, like, not work if I can't. Like, what if I get pregnant and I decide I want to stay home with my kid? You know, I should be able to.
And that's reasonable.
Yeah.
That's exactly
And I think that's what innately men are made to do, is to be able to provide. And women are nurturers. Like, we're supposed to take care of things. And that's part of why some women, like myself, are so good at building something and creating something and stewarding that and taking care of it, because we are caretakers and we're nurturers. So if that's not children, it might be a business, you know? And that's kind of what I've done. And I feel like I'll make also an amazing mother someday, I hope, because the care that I would put into my work, into my business, I can also do that in my house and with my children. And so I kind of want the option, I definitely want the option to be able to do that someday. And I think that is just really, if you look at how the world started and you look at history, and you see what has been the most successful over the course of history and what is the norm over the course of history, which is that the man provides and the woman takes care of things. Like, that's what it's supposed to be.
Exactly right.
I feel like I want to, oh my days, I want to say, like, we're living in the world whereby everything that you're saying right now is being controversial, like, to the point that some women don't believe that they are meant to just stay being at home, stay mother, cooking and doing all providing care for children and all of this stuff. And as we just mentioned before, like, some don't even believe like they need men in their lives. So you saying that, is it because you grew up in a certain traditional family where you saw your father working up to 200 hours a week? Or
Not too much.
I think like 100, but
100?
I don't know if he could sleep if it was 200.
Because I was like 200 hours a week. I was like, oh, it
But
should
still,
be like
100 is a lot.
100.
It's a lot.
That's
100 is
100,
a lot of
it's a lot
hours.
of hours.
So as I've been saying now, do you think it's because you grew up in such environment, or it's really your belief, something that you find out like that is how things should be?
Yeah, I think, well, and you just look at like psychology, and anytime someone grows up a certain way, that sort of innately becomes who they are and what they believe. And unless they choose to go outside of that norm and, you know, step outside their bubble and form a new worldview, then that's where you came from, and so that's what you believe. So I think there's some women that have watched maybe their mom was a single mom who like struggled, and maybe they didn't have a father that provided, and so their worldview is men are terrible, I don't need a man, I can take care of myself, I watched my mom do it and I can do it too, you know. And so I think it all kind of stems from where your world view is, and if you choose to actually like take a step back and analyze and look at history and see, really how should the world work? What actually is proven to be the best model? Who are we, supposed to be? And I think that if someone did that, the person in the situation of like having a single mom would actually look and realize that she was just in a broken system. And that doesn't mean that women don't need men just because of her situation. It's because, she wasn't surrounded by strong men in the first place, and that's not her fault. But, that's not what she needs to, I think, apply to the whole world, that viewpoint, So I don't know if I answered that question fully. But
yeah, sure, you did. You did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Would you say the building block for you or for just a society in general, is it a traditional home where there's a mother, there's a father, kids, or more of a broken home, or just a father, or just a mother, and then taking care of kids? Which way would you say is a building block for a society?
For society, I think is absolutely the stable father providing for his wife and his children. I think that's and that's naturally how humans operate. If you are like a stable and a whole human and person, you're not a broken person, then naturally that's what we all gravitate towards, and that's how we naturally operate. And I think, again, if you look at history, that's really how for generations, that's how it's been. And the whole feminist movement is about, look back at history. Generations, men have oppressed us, which I think is very wrong in some ways. It is true in other ways. Like I am thankful that I can get a credit card on my own. I can buy a house on my own as a single woman. I do think women should be allowed to do that. Previously, women couldn't vote. Women couldn't buy property. They couldn't even open a bank account or have a credit card without a husband. And that, I do think that is wrong, and I'm happy that women have equal rights now. I'm all about that. I think the problem with the feminist movement is saying, we can run the world. We don't need men. And that's kind of where it goes downhill. And then you don't have a stable family. It's out of balance. And there's boys nowadays being raised by women with these feminist mindsets, and they don't have a strong male figure in their life. And I think that's part of some of the men that we see today have been raised that way. And then they don't continue on a good cycle, essentially.
Certainly.
Yeah.
How would you define that, this spirituality, the impact relationships, and how can men and women really help each other respecting their role in the relationship or in the family? Yeah,
that's a great question. And it's definitely one that I am not perfect at by any means. I think it's a tough thing to do. But I really look to my parents as a strong example of that. And I think that what they do, the Christian faith is just very important to both of them. So I think they prioritize, actually over each other, they actually prioritize their relationship with God. Because, and even if, I haven't always been a perfect Christian, I have plenty of friends who aren't, but the one thing that I do think is true is you have to prioritize your relationship with God over any other relationship, because people will always let you down. And even if they have the best of intentions towards you, like there's going to be that day where, like my dad and my mom, for example, where, my dad is just tired and grumpy, and my mom gets slightly hurt by maybe his attitude that day, but she can't have him on such a pedestal that he's in like a position of God in her life, because he's going to be like that sometimes, just like vice versa. Yeah. And so I think the first step is your relationship with God has to be first and foremost, whatever that looks like for each person. And you cannot put someone else, especially the person you're married to, you're in a relationship with, in like that position of God in your life, because they will just let you down. And then on top of that, I think it's there's a lot of scriptures in the Bible that really do talk about what that relationship between a man and a wife is supposed to look like, and how to keep God, the center of the relationship. And so I know when my parents make decisions, they're both, if they can't decide on something, they're both taking time away from each other to actually talk to God and hear from God on their own, as to what, they feel God is telling them.
Sure.
And I think then they will come back together, and they will share, this is what God told me, this is what God told me, and be able to sort of bring that together to come to a decision. And then obviously there's that scripture about, where two or more are gathered, Jesus is there. And I think that's just praying together is really important, especially if, you're both facing something. So, yeah.
I love that. But how can they support each other in their respective roles and responsibilities as a family or as in the relationships?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one, because it can really depend on a lot of different factors, and different people have sort of different interpretations of really what their role is. So if you're going off of traditional roles that the Bible specifies for a husband and a wife, then I think it's like just holding each other to just knowing the scriptures and knowing what it says, and this is how you're supposed to live, and holding each other to that standard by, reminding each other when you see someone slipping, and that's what I think true relationships are. If I want any of my friends, if I'm not doing something right, or I'm just created something that's terrible, in my business, or I made a PowerPoint slide that was, I was like, hey, what do you think? And if it's terrible, I really want someone to tell me that.
Accountability is very important.
And so I think that's kind of, that goes with spirituality too, and those roles is just holding each other accountable. Yeah,
so if you have somebody that's accountable to everything you're doing, it applies not only just in relationships, business, everything that you're doing.
Exactly.
And so it also it helps you be a better version of yourself whenever you have someone watching over you, or especially as we're speaking in relationship, in terms of relationship, looking out for each other's best interests also comes into play. But I think it's a good perspective. That in terms of just the roles that men and women can have, if you're accountable, keeping account of each other's works, it helps you build more respect for the other person as well.
I think so. Yeah, and that's true love. I mean, true love is that you're actually honest with someone, and if they slip up, you're actually going to tell them you really messed up, you need to fix that, versus some people think that love is saying nice things all the time, but it's not.
You touched on something that just wakes me up. I'm not saying I was sleeping, but so what I'm trying to imply is, so many people in relationship are so intrigued and so hurt to the point when they do something wrong and their partner tell them, hey, so this was not good, this wasn't right. Okay, and they feel hurt about either their partner telling them that. So but you telling that, it should be accountable, so they should be telling people. So how do you think a person can really approach their partner in the right way without making them feel hurt, or without judging them, but telling them in the right way that they have done something that is not okay, and maybe to help them having that with maybe empathy, right, instead of judging them based on what they've done wrong.
100%. I think that's a really important thing to think about. I think and you use the word judging, and I think that is actually one of the first things, is you can't come at it from a place of judgment, but actually again from that place of love, where it's because you want this person to be the best version of themselves, and whatever they just did was not that, or maybe it's a relationship thing, and maybe they did something directly to hurt you, and so it's, yes, for yourself, you need to always look out for yourself, but also for the sake of the relationship, you want to have the best relationship that you can, and hopefully you both share that same goal. And so coming at it from that place of, you know, what you said made me unhappy, or that was very hurtful, that was very upsetting, you know, whatever that is, and coming at it from a place of, I want us to be at peace with each other, and I want this to be a healthy relationship, so I'm not going to sweep this under the rug, I'm going to bring this up. And then the other person has to have an open mind and come at it from a humble point of view, and in a place of understanding that they're not perfect, and that sometimes you do things that you think are totally fine and it hurts someone else, and you just have to understand that and be willing to be humble. And I mean, I think when it's two reasonable people, that's easy to reach that place of peace and reconciliation. There's always those relationships that are abusive, and one person's like super crazy maybe, and so the other person is being accused of something they didn't do. You know, there's always these outliers of you know, very, very bad relationships where certain things I think don't apply across the board. But in generally speaking, with I think two like solid people, you just come at it from a point of view of not like, you know, being crazy and hysterical and you're just so mean and that was terrible, you know, but from a perspective of, you know, like I'm a mature person, but that did hurt me.
Yeah.
And I want us to be, you know, have a peaceful relationship, and I want us to both be happy, and that really didn't help. And also taking care of it right away, I think, is so important. I'm not one to, I don't have a problem with confrontation. And I think a lot of people do, and a lot of people are very passive. Yeah. And so I really think you have to take care of things right away too. Yeah.
That's great. That's incredible. So Taylor, what do you think about that?
I actually wanted to add one thing. We'll just kind of shift things a little bit. There's something that was coming to mind.